It is said that when someone dies, they become a star. But there was someone who was born a star. Regarded as a musical genius, king of pop, and a fashion icon, he was not just a man, but rather a global phenomenon who redefined stardom, fanhood, and euphoria. He was Michael Joseph Jackson, or simply MJ, as called by millions of his worshippers from every nook and cranny of the world. A musician, singer, arranger, composer, songwriter, dancer, and performer, MJ was above all the biggest entertainer in this world that the world could ever see. But stardom came at a huge cost for this little boy from a small town in Indiana. Michael never had a childhood as he began working at the tender age of 5, which meant gruesome rehearsals, no Christmas or birthday celebrations, no childhood friendships, and a troubled relationship with his father. In his later years, his controversies made more news than his music, and he was often misunderstood by his fans and mostly misaligned by the media. Just like his song Black or White, his life was checkered that was full of inspiration and intrigue. Michael Jackson was born in a modest African-American family on the 29th of August, 1958, in the suburbs of Gary, Indiana, in the United States of America. He was Catherine Esther Scruggs and Joseph Walter Joe Jackson's 7th child, born after the premature death of his infant brother, Brandon. Michael had 8 siblings comprising of 3 sisters, Maureen, Ruby, Latoya, and Janet, and 5 brothers, namely Toriano or Tito, Sigmund, called Jackie, Marlon, Stephen, Randy, and Jermaine. MJ's father, Joe, was the first of the Jacksons to dream big. He spent a good part of his life wanting to become a professional boxer, a desire he could not fulfill due to lack of talent and injuries. He then began pursuing a musical career and formed the Falcons, a rhythm and blues band R&B in which he played the guitar. His brother Luther also joined the group as a saxophonist. However, Joe was unable to realize his dream of becoming a famous musician either, as the Falcons failed to land a single record deal even after 2 long years of struggle. Michael's mother, Catherine, too, aspired to be a country singer. In the high school, Catherine joined the local high school band where she played the piano, clarinet, and the guitar. But back in the 1940s, there were no takers for a limping black female singer, and her dreams soon folded. Catherine had contracted polio at the age of 2, and even though she survived the disease, it left her with a noticeable permanent limp. However, she never gave up on music and played an important role in inspiring the Jackson siblings to take up music right from the very beginning. Both Joe and Catherine found their escape in music and encouraged their children to sing and dance whenever they found time. Catherine would teach them folk and religious songs while Joe began giving Michael's older brothers, Tito, Jackie, and Jermaine, guitar lessons. Little Michael, too small to join, would watch his elder brothers and sisters practice with their father. He absorbed a great deal just by watching his siblings perform in their little house. Catherine was the first person to notice Michael's talent at the age of 5. When she saw him dancing and singing along with the radio, she pointed this to Joe, who took Michael under his wing along with older brother Marlon. Joe soon realized that his kids had serious talent and started spending more time with them. He was a great trainer who believed that great talent required great cultivation and spent a lot of time and money working with his children. He bought a gleaming red guitar for Tito out of his modest savings. There was little money for such luxuries, but this did not stop Joe from bringing in more musical equipments for each of his kids. He went into buying a bass, amplifier, and microphones, and soon Jackson's house began to look like a music store. Joe Jackson was a complex man, to say the least. On one hand, he was this devoted father who worked tirelessly to nurture his kids' talent, and on the other hand, he was known to physically and mentally abuse them. He was a strict disciplinarian, ready to whip his children during rehearsals if they made mistakes. A mere appearance of Joe would make 5-year-old Michael shiver and sometimes even puke in fear, as his father would beat him up with a belt. Joe was also extremely critical of Michael's physical appearance and would often taunt him about the size of his nose. That, coupled with regular beatings he endured at the hands of his father, resulted in a submissive and quiet personality. Once, Joe held young Michael upside down by one leg and pummeled him over and over again with his hand, hitting him on his back and buttock. In another instance, one night while MJ was asleep, Joseph climbed into his room through the bedroom window. Wearing a fright mask, he entered the room screaming and shouting, scaring the daylight out of the young kids. Joe said he wanted to teach the children not to leave the window open when they were asleep. For a number of years afterward, MJ suffered nightmares about being kidnapped from his bedroom, although his father's strict discipline helped Michael become sincere in music. At the same time, he developed various fears and complexes because of it, the biggest complex being his constant dissatisfaction with the way that he looked. Catherine was the peaceful respite for the Jackson kids, and she balanced out the aggressive nature of their father. She was warm, gentle, and attentive to all the 9 children. She believed that her polio was not a curse but a test that God gave her to triumph over. She instilled such faith in the minds of the little Jacksons. She always told Michael that his talent for singing and dancing was as much God's work as a beautiful sunset or a storm that left snow for children to play in. She worried about the stress that the kids were under, thanks to the strict disciplinarian methods of her husband. She somewhat reduced their pain with her love and support. Thus, as a kid, Michael saw 2 extremes at home in form of a domineering father and a caring mother. This had a dual impact on his personality. On one hand, he developed a strong spiritual side that was full of goodness and love for all. On the other hand, he developed various phobias that haunted him throughout his adult life. Under the strict watch of Joe, the Jackson kids formed a band in 1962 comprising of the 3 eldest boys, Tito, Jermaine, and Jackie. The band began to perform at talent shows and local clubs. In 1964, Michael and Marlon joined the group. Michael, who was 6, played the congas, while Marlon, who was 7, played the tambourine. With Michael's immense singing talent, he soon became the side vocalist and later the lead singer and star performer of the group. Their lineup was set. Michael was second from left, facing the audience, Jermaine in the wing next to Michael, and Jackie on the right. Tito and his guitar took stage right, with Marlon next to him, simply called the Jackson Brothers. They created their own unique sound, a blend of pop and folk music using unconventional musical instruments like congas and tambourine. Gaining in popularity, they started making regular appearances in the musical contest across the Midwest, which they won thanks to Michael's amazing vocals and dance moves. The Jackson brothers were renamed Jackson 5, and their fame began to spread to nearby Chicago. Their father, Joe, gave up his job at the steel mill and started managing the Jackson 5 full-time. To make ends meet, he got them a regular act at Mr. Lucky at Night Spot in Gary. Michael and his brothers played 5 nights a week at the Striptease Club and spent their weekends in Chicago or other places trying to win as many amateur contests as possible. Michael was only 9 at that time, and Mother Catherine would often worry about the kids working so hard and in places not suitable for their tender age. But Joe wanted to wield his kids in front of live audiences in order to prepare them for the big challenges that lay ahead. All the shows turned out to be great learning experiences for the Jackson brothers as they mastered their skills with each performance. Michael sometimes did not even understand the words that he was singing, but when he sung it, everyone listened, and when he moved, everyone was left mesmerized. In 1967, with the help of Tito's school orchestra teacher Shirley Cartman, the Jackson 5 cut their first record deal with the local company Steeltown, owned by Gordon Keith. Their first single, Big Boy, was released in January of 1968 and became a regional hit. This was followed by a second single, We Don't Have to Be Over 21 to Fall in Love. Michael became the blue-eyed boy of the Jackson 5 and got maximum female attention, which he thoroughly enjoyed. He was a supremely gifted artist. Even his brothers used to wonder that without learning he knew so much, which was almost unbelievable, but this gift also meant that Michael was deprived of many basic aspects of a regular childhood. Michael's childhood was far from being normal, with long, exhaustive hours of rehearsals that left little time for fun and games. While other kids of his age enjoyed a carefree life, Michael would be slogging hard after school, sometimes without snacks and with little time for sleep. However, Michael never considered this work, since he loved singing and dancing, and even at such a young age, he constantly worked to improve himself. Besides music, Michael loved going to school and attended Garrett Elementary School in Gary. He loved mingling with other kids and was a favorite of many of his teachers. Michael loved his teachers so much he would steal his mother's jewelry and give it to them as presents. As far as studies were concerned, Michael managed to score above average grades in spite of hectic work schedule, but his rising fame and frequent tours meant he had to give up school when he was just 11. Thereafter, he was coached by a private tutor 3 hours a day who also traveled with Michael in his various tours. Michael often satisfied his childlike desires by playing pranks on his sisters. He would tease his sister Latoya by putting spider in her bed and would threaten to spoil her bed as she was a cleanliness freak. He was very close to his younger sister, Janet, but did not spare her either. He nicknamed her Dunk, as he felt that she was too big and looked like a donkey. Being a part of the band also meant that Michael was exposed to sexuality too early in life. For instance, at the beginning of his career, the Jackson brothers would do the rounds of what was called the Chitlin Circuit, a string of black clubs and venues. It involved performing at adult black clubs where striptease acts were the norm. A vulnerable Michael was also made to share a room with his brothers while they had sex with various women on music tours. After winning numerous talent shows and becoming a household name in Gary and Chicago, Joe decided that it was time to head to New York, a land of bigger opportunities. The Jackson 5 secured a spot in the famous amateur night competition at the Apollo Theater in Harlem, New York. It turned out to be more than a competition for Little Michael. Little Michael was awestruck to be at the theater where he saw pictures of big stars strung to the wall. Michael would sneak backstage, crouching low, holding onto the stage curtain and watching the other performers at the Apollo Theater. He would observe every step, every little detail. He called this his education and recreation. On August 13, 1967, the Jackson 5 won the competition during the Amateur Night Showdown and caught the attention of Motown Records artist Gladys Knight, who recommended the group to Motown chief Berry Gordy. Motown Records was a major force in the musical industry back then, and an audition with them could be the game changer for the Jackson 5. But the audition call did not come that easy, as Gordy, who already had teenager Stevie Wonder on his roster, was hesitant to take another child act because of the restrictive child labor laws. After a year-long wait, the Jackson 5 finally had their Motown audition on July 23, 1968, for which they performed James Brown's then current hit, I Got the Feeling. When it ended, there was no applause and no word said by anyone. The Jackson 5, along with their father manager Joe Jackson, returned home subdued and disappointed. A few days later, Joe received a call from Motown that his kids had passed the audition and had been signed for a record deal. This was biggest turning point in the career of the Jackson 5, as the small band from Indiana had finally entered the mainstream music industry, and they sure did it with a bang. Their first 4 singles for Motown, I Want You Back, ABC, The Love You Save, and I'll Be There, hit #1 spot, a very first in pop history. They sold more than 2 million copies each. The Jackson 5 moved to California and stayed with Motown chief Gordy and another Motown star, Diana Ross, who looked after the kids like a mother. Michael, who was just 11, was thrilled with his new life and knew that performing at cheap clubs was now a thing of the past. It was a great time for Michael and his brothers as they visited Disneyland, swam together at the Sunset Strip beach, played games, and rehearsed with Motown artists. Motown's PR team ensured that Michael and his brothers were heavily merchandised on everything from stickers and jacket patches to posters, lunchboxes, coloring books, and a Saturday morning cartoon on ABC that ran for 2 seasons, beginning in 1971. And with every success, MJ blossomed and started getting more and more limelight. A clever Gordy tapped into Michael's potential and recorded 4 solo albums with him. They were as successful as the group albums, hinting at the international phenomenon which Michael Jackson was on the verge of becoming. In 1971, when Michael Jackson was just 13, his first single, Got to Be There, made it to the top 5. Following his achievement, his cover version of R&B singer Bobby Day's Rockin' Robin repeated the same feat. In 1972, Ben, a song he sang for a children's movie about rats, became his first solo single to reach #1 spot. It was also nominated for an Academy Award. A prequel to the Moonwalk, Michael started enthralling audiences with his unique robot steps and the single The Dancing Machine. The Times praised the 14-year-old's performance in the Liverpool Empire in the United Kingdom. Where a legendary life story was in the making, romance was blooming in the air for Michael. The young entertainer had his first real date with the child actress Tatum O'Neal when he was 17, and he called her his first love. She was a popular actress who, at the age of 12, became the youngest person ever to win the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress for her performance in The Paper Moon. Michael and Tatum dated till the early 80s until the pair eventually cooled off as both were too busy with their respective careers. It seemed like a joyous time for the Jackson family professionally as they started enjoying the fruits of their years of toil. However, a seamier side of their speedy rise to glamour and wealth emerged as their personal relationships hit troubled waters. As Michael began to hog the limelight, differences started to rise between the children. Ego clashes became normal, and they began taking shots at each other, sometimes even in public. Their musical careers as a band also derailed during this period. After 1972, the Jackson 5's release with Motown were not as successful. Just like Michael, elder brothers Jackie and Jermaine came out with their own solo albums, but that too found little success. The brothers and father began to believe that Motown was not giving them enough artistic freedom and began looking for a new record deal. In 1975, Joe negotiated a recording contract with CBS Records, formerly known as Infinity Broadcasting Corporation, who offered a royalty rate of 20% per record compared to Motown's standard 2.8, and would allow the Jackson brothers to write and produce their own records and play their own instruments. They were, however, forced to change their name into the Jacksons as the Motown retained the Jackson 5 trademark. Randy replaced Jermaine in the group as the latter married Gordy's daughter Hazel and decided to stay with Motown, pursuing his solo career. This further strained the relations between the Jackson siblings. While managing his boys, Joe was alleged to have engaged in several extramarital affairs, which contributed in several siblings being estranged from their domineering father. Subsequently, the Jackson Band disintegrated officially but collaborated multiple times in the future, although for brief periods only. Michael's greatness lies in the fact that he did not allow his personal anguish to hamper his blossoming musical career. Instead, he used music as a weapon to gain independence from his troubled personal life and touched the hearts of millions around the world. In 1978, Michael made his first foray into cinema in a modern adaptation of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz called The Wiz, co-starring Diana Ross and other in all-black production. Based on a Broadway musical of the same name, the film tanked at box office and was panned by critics despite 4 Oscar nominations. Working in The Wiz was nevertheless a life-changing experience for Michael. It was here that he met legendary producer and composer Quincy Jones, with whom he forged a bond that lasted a lifetime. Michael's relationship with his father manager Joe had always been turbulent, and when Joe entered his life, Michael relinquished Joe of his managerial duties. Jones became a father figure and a role model for Michael, and he quickly latched onto him to fill the void in his life. Jones took Michael under his wing and helped him bring out his next album titled Off the Wall. The recordings took place across Los Angeles, and Michael got the opportunity to work with his music industry stalwarts like musician Todd Temperton, as well as singers Paul McCartney and Stevie Wonder. Michael's education paid off as the album won both critical and public acclaim. The hit single Don't Stop Till You Get Enough that he wrote went platinum on the charts. The multi-platinum certified Off the Wall broke records with songs like Rock With You and sold over 20 million copies worldwide. A perfect blend of multiple music genres like pop, disco, funk, soul, jazz, and soft rock. It also earned Michael his first Grammy Award. While the Jacksons faded as a band in the early 80s, Michael was getting tremendous recognition as an individual artist. In an era where only Hollywood actors were seeing stardom, MJ revived the pop star culture. His solo album, Thriller, released in 1982 to an astounding response which till date remains the undisputed champion as the best-selling album of all time. Produced by Quincy Jones, it took the music of Off the Wall to the next level. Michael created an over 10-minute long Thriller video that was played over and over again on MTV, an upcoming music channel at that time. A compact horror film with evolutionary effects and makeup, it set the standard for the music video format of today. Michael explored his dark side and the duality of his personality in the video, playing the role of a cute teenager who changes into a zombie at night. The zombie dance sequence where Michael joins the other monsters was a brilliant and memorable piece of choreography. The video is still considered by many as the best music video of all time. MTV owed its initial popularity to path-breaking Thriller and the other video by MJ, including Beat It, all of which told stories to draw the viewers in. Thriller continued to break records and spawn singles, each more successful than the next. Industry analysts were befuddled by the seemingly endless hit single that kept coming from the album, 7 of which reached the top 10 single position. Thriller was number 1 for a mind-boggling 37 weeks and refused to give up its place on the charts for an unmatched period of 2 years. Thriller brought Michael national and international fame, selling 29 million copies in the US and 20 million abroad. He became a household name around the globe and won 80 Grammy Awards, and it also made him richer by $125 million. Pepsi made him the brand ambassador, and Michael landed the biggest endorsement deal of that time of reportedly $50 million. He also won a sponsorship deal with American shoe company LA Gear. In 1981, Michael met 15-year-old model actress Brooke Shields and fell in love with her. They had a close relationship that lasted for several years. They would talk about marriage several times but never tied the knot, as their relationship was more platonic than romantic. In May 16, 1983, the original Jackson 5 returned, reunited after nearly 7 years to celebrate Motown's 25th anniversary. It was during this televised performance that 24-year-old Michael did what he termed moonwalk dance move during his rendition of the Billie Jean. It was a baffling, gravity-defying dance move in which he gave the impression of moving forward when in fact he was moving backwards. The move became an instant rage, and MJ moonwalked right into the hearts of his innumerable fans. It soon became a common sight at discos, parties, and even at movies. Ecstatic at its popularity, Michael even named his autobiography Moonwalk. Jackson also got his solo start in the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 1984. the Jackson 5 already had a star in 1979. He and Diana Ross are the only two people to have 2 stars in the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Michael Jackson's fashion sense was as remarkable as his musical style and dance moves. Millions imitated his pegged pants and penny loafers. In 1984, 26-year-old MJ was filming a Pepsi commercial in front of a full house of fans. During the simulated concert, pyrotechnics accidentally set Jackson's hair on fire. He suffered second-degree burns to his scalp and was immediately rushed to the hospital. Jackson underwent treatment to hide the scars on his scalp, but never recovered from this injury. Although shaken by the accident, it never dented Michael's spirit, as he always bounced back from every obstacle that came his way. Jackson donated $1.5 million settlement to the Broadman Medical Center in Culver City, California, where he received his treatment. The hospital now named Michael Jackson Burn Center in honor of his donation. His collaboration with his favorite Beatles star Paul McCartney, Say Say Say, once again reached the #1 position in 1983. In 1984, Michael and his brothers joined hands once again for a new album called Victory. At the peak of Michael's career, everyone wanted to work with him. In 1985, he wrote the inspiring We Are the World along with the singer Lionel Richie. All the big musical stars of that generation lent their voices and appeared in the music videos of that song at Michael's request. It broke records and became one of the fastest-selling singles of all time. It was also the beginning of Michael's involvement with social causes, as the profit for sales was utilized for famine relief in Africa. Michael's professional highs had always been accompanied by personal lows. A case in point was the year 1985. That year, ATV Musical Publishing, a company that owned the publishing rights to most of the Lennon-McCartney Beatles songs, was put on sale, which meant that the acquirer would get 50% ownership of the hit songs. MJ immediately showed interest. McCartney himself bid for the rights to his own songs, but dropped out when MJ agreed to shell out $47.5 million for 50% of ownership. This irrevocably strained the relationship between the two friends and collaborators, as McCartney found it quite annoying to pay for playing his own songs. Post-1985, Michael decided to take a long break from music. After the well-deserved break from music, Michael, 29 now, once again teamed up with Quincy Jones to accomplish the insurmountable task of recreating the magic of Thriller in a fresh new album titled Bad. Superstar Michael Jackson loved being in the company of children. Children don't lie to you. Children are pure and innocent and good. Being with children is like being blessed, like being with angels, Michael would say often about them. He had a harsh childhood, and perhaps this was the reason he was so fond of kids and loved to do things for them. Michael had lived in the world of grown-ups that was filled with brutality, backbiting, and fear. His childhood was lost with treacherous world, and so in 1988, when he was financially secure, he decided to relive his childhood by building a world where there was peace and kindness, where every candy imaginable was available, and where fun was the only accepted currency. He chose a 27,000-acre land near Santa Ynez, California, to build this world and call it Neverland Ranch. It cost him $17 million, and he installed Ferris wheels, roller coasters, mini train, a movie theater, a private zoo, and a staff of 40 to guard this wonderland.
These may have been reminders of activities he was never able to participate in as a child due to his strict and regimented upbringing. Every year, hundreds of underprivileged children would be given guided tours to MJ's Wonderland, sometimes by MJ himself. Michael's philanthropic work did not end here. From 1985 to 1990, he donated $500,000 to the UNCF, and all the profits from his single, Man in the Mirror, also went to charity. His generosity and significant involvement in the social causes were commemorated with the Soul Train Heritage Award given to him in 1989. Michael was associated with a number of children's charities as well as started his own Heal the World Foundation in 1992, through which he donated over $300 million. He holds the Guinness World Record for a pop star giving aids to the largest number of charities. Following the death of American teenager Ryan Wayne White from HIV/AIDS, Michael also became an unofficial spokesperson for the illness that was still considered a stigma during his time. A noteworthy achievement was his public appeal in the President Bill Clinton seeking funds for AIDS-related research and charities. In 1988, Michael Jackson released his only autobiography, Moonwalk, in which he wrote about his childhood, the Jackson 5, and the abuse that he suffered. He also wrote about his facial appearance, saying he had 2 rhinoplastic surgeries and a dimple created in his chin. He attributed much of his change in the structure of his face to puberty, weight loss, a strict vegetarian diet, a change in hairstyle, and stage lighting. Moonwalk sold 200,000 copies and reached the top position on the New York Times bestsellers list. MJ then released a film called Moonwalker, which featured live footage and short films that starred Jackson and a British actor, Joe Pesci. The film was originally intended to be released in theaters, but due to financial issues, the film was released direct to video. It was a theatrical release in Germany. It debuted atop the Billboard Top Music Video Cassette chart and stayed there for 22 weeks. After briefly disappearing from the musical scene, Michael re-emerged with Dangerous in 1991. Released in 1991, the new album made its entry at the top #1 position on the charts, and Michael signed the biggest ever recording contract with Sony Music. The catchy Black or White was also a chart topper and gave the message of racial equality. Perhaps in an effort to give the music video an urban edge, Michael inserted a violent segment towards the end. He was shown destroying cars and grabbing his crotch in an obscene gesture. Incongruous with the rest of the video, this portion did not go well with his prime time viewing audience, who collectively slammed it. As his musical career hit a roadblock post 1993, Michael's behavior went out of control, seemingly into bizarre and inexplicable territory, adding fuel to public curiosity and intense media scrutiny was Michael himself. Shy and insecure by nature, he chose to withdraw from the public eye and was reluctant to give the media interviews about his private life. An immature and childlike Michael did prefer the company of animals to complicated human beings. He had adopted a chimpanzee called Bubbles who would accompany him during recording sessions for bad. The media had no way of explaining these strange preferences to his fans and instead dubbed him Wacko Jacko, a moniker Michael hated with passion. It was then that he decided to call himself the King of Pop, However, Wacko Jacko stuck and he was not able to get rid of it for the rest of his life. People also wondered at Michael's abnormally soft and feminine voice. They felt he underwent hormone treatments to preserve his youthful quality, a rumor Michael Jackson did not bother to refute. The international black community was outraged by Michael's light skin tone. He was becoming fairer with each passing year. They alleged that the star who sang "It Don't Matter If You're Black or White" was a racist himself and was trying to become white. In the past, Michael had alluded to the burn injuries he sustained while trying to shoot a Pepsi commercial. During the Oprah interview in 1993, he revealed that his skin tone had changed since due to a disorder that destroys the pigmentation of his skin. Michael was found to have a skin condition called vitiligo, in which there is a loss of brown color pigment from areas of skin, resulting in irregular patches that appear like normal skin. Always battling health issues, he also had a lupus, a systematic autoimmune disease which causes skin to appear blotchy with rashes. At the center of controversy and attracting oodles of public interest was Michael's Neverland Ranch in California, built at a staggering cost of $17 million. Why did a grown man need his own amusement park and zoo? Be flooded by such questions, people made their own assumption about Michael, ranging from him being a reclusive billionaire at best to an asexual predator and a psychopathic freak. It was difficult to comprehend how a star adored by millions all over the globe could be insecure about his appearance and think of himself as ugly. Michael was so unhappy with his facial features that he went under the knife not just once but a number of times. Willing to risk it all to attain the perfect look, the misguided superstar underwent multiple procedures. His concerns about his facial features can be traced to his childhood, when an overly critical father would frequently tell him that his nose was too large. While most children get over their adolescent obsession with appearances, Michael was unable to do so. The scars of an abusive father ran deep within him. Michael's first tryst with plastic surgery took place when he was 25. It was the year 1983 when Thriller was released. In the video, one could clearly see his more defined, smaller nose and shapier eyebrows. The black community noticed too, and there was a mini uproar as Michael was said to be favoring delicate white features over his normal facial structure. In the late 80s, Michael's appearance began changing drastically and evolved into bizarre. He got another nose job done to make it narrower. Michael also underwent a procedure to get permanent eyeliner around his eyes. Some say he started wearing makeup while making public appearances. At this stage, though his face looked different from his childhood years, Michael's overall look still bore some resemblance to his original features. But what happened next was both shocking and horrific in equal measure. In an effort to acquire higher cheekbones, Michael underwent the surgery once again. However, this time the surgery went wrong and his face was scarred for life, perhaps in order to conceal his experimentation with plastic surgery from his fans. Michael did not sue the surgeon responsible for permanently destroying his face. To rectify the irreparable damage done to his facial features and further improve them, Michael went on to get a cleft in his chin, a manlier jaw, tinier nostrils, firmer cheeks, and a prosthetic tip for his nose. Caught in an endless cycle of damage and repair, Michael would be dissatisfied with the result of each procedure and would then move on to something new. For instance, he got the cleft removed in favor of a chin implant. In June 1992, the media had a field day as Michael's pictures of over 10 surgeries playing havoc in his face were splashed all over the newspapers and the internet. Michael even sued one of them, Daily Mirror, for the front page photograph of him tagged as hideously disfigured. Michael's trouble took on a more serious note as the allegations of child sexual abuse emerged, threatening to destroy his musical career forever. In 1993, Jackson was accused of child sexual abuse by a 13-year-old boy named Jordan Chandler and his father, Dr. Evan Chandler, a dentist. What followed was a storm of allegations and counter-allegations that knocked Michael off his feet and almost killed his musical career. Michael first met Jordan, who was a fan of his, in May 1992. At that time, Jordan's father, Evan, was happy and proud that his son could count a celebrity among his friends. In a piece called Michael's New Adopted Family, Evan said that he was jealous of Jordan's attachment to Michael, who had stolen him from his father. Michael would invite Jordan, his stepsister, and mother June, who had his custody, for weekend trips to his Neverland ranch. Jordan and his mother also attended the World Music Award with him. Evan wanted Michael to build him a new home and allowed him to sleep with his son and stepbrother in the same room during a 5-day visit to his place. Always resentful of Jordan's hero worship of Michael, who intruded into his time alone with his son, Evan did admit that he had never actually seen the two in a state of undress together, nor had he ever caught them in a compromising position. On August 4, Evan and Jordan met Michael to reach an out-of-court financial settlement. Evan and his lawyer denied Michael's offer of $350,000 to settle the matter. Things took a turn for the worse as it was discovered that Michael would allow children to sleep over at Neverland. On 18th of August, he began to be criminally investigated by the LAPD, Los Angeles Police Department, over 30 children, including Michael's friends Wade Robson and Brett Barnes, who had stayed with Michael in Neverland Ranch numerous times, denied ever being molested by him, though many had slept in the same bed as him. A few years later, he was once again dragged to the court by 13-year-old Gavin Arizo, who appeared in a documentary called Living with Michael Jackson. While most members of Michael's huge family stood by him through this ordeal, his own sister, Latoya, who had never been close to him, emerged out of the woodwork and accused him of being a pedophile. Fortunately, Michael was acquitted of all the charges, and Latoya later admitted that her then-husband had forced her to make these claims for monetary benefit. A broken Michael, perhaps in an effort to restore his public image, then sought solace in the arms of the legendary Elvis Presley's daughter, the beautiful Lisa Marie Presley. The fairy tale romance between Michael and Lisa began when Michael was just a teenager. Lisa Marie used to attend the Jackson 5 shows in Las Vegas. During the child sexual abuse ordeal, he met Lisa Marie once again through a friend, and she became his support system. They would have long chats on the telephone. Largely a long-distance relationship, Michael proposed marriage to her over the phone in his own unique and romantic way. "If I asked you to marry me, would you do it?" he said. Lisa Marie said yes. Michael and Lisa Marie had frequent arguments. Michael wanted to be a father, while Lisa felt like he was too emotionally immature to be a parent and that he was the one who needed parenting. Following several more troubled months, Lisa filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences, and their marriage of 2 years ended in August of 1996. The divorce proved difficult for Michael, who spent several weeks lamenting his loss. Lisa was the first person with whom he had connected on such a high level. She had supported him as he faced allegations and became dependent on pain medication. At that time, Michael was afraid that there would never be another woman who could make him feel the way his ex-wife had. He eventually realized that he had to move on. He had a world tour coming up and music to work on. Jackson also knew that Lisa would never make him a father, which he longed to be. Even before his marriage to Lisa Marie Pursley, Michael remained extremely close to nurse Debbie Rowe, who had been helping him with the treatment of vitiligo ever since he was diagnosed with the condition in the mid-80s. As Lisa Marie had refused to carry Jackson's children, Rowe offered to give birth to a child for the pop singer through surrogacy. Shortly after the separation of Lisa and Michael, Rowe became pregnant with MJ's child but suffered a miscarriage in March of 1996. Several months after his divorce with Lisa, Michael Jackson embarked on the first leg of his History World Tour on September of 1996. 1 month into the tour, his personal life made headlines as it was revealed that Debbie Rowe was once again pregnant with his child. When the news of Rowe's pregnancy reached Michael's mother, Catherine, she urged her son to marry the mother of his unborn child. Jackson and Rowe got married on November 13, 1996 at the Sheraton on the Park Hotel in Sydney, Australia. Just like his first marriage, media and public reaction to the marriage was once again negative and cynical. Reports alleged that the relationship was an economic one and she was in it for the money and he sought a baby, which was later found to be true. Michael and Debbie had 2 children, Michael Joseph Prince Jackson Jr., born in February 13, 1997, and Paris Michael Catherine Jackson, born in April 3, 1998. The kids grew at Neverland Ranch and were cared for by the team of 6 nannies and 6 nurses. Their mother, Debbie, was hardly around, and soon stories emerged that Debbie had abandoned her children. Quote, "My kids don't call me mom because I don't want them to. They're Michael's children. It's not that they're not my children, but I had them because I wanted him to be a father. If he called me tonight and said, let's have 5 more children, I'd do it in a heartbeat," end quote, said Debbie, trying to explain her relationship with Michael and their children. Feeling uncomfortable with their arrangement, Debbie Rowe asked Michael for a divorce, which he granted without fuss on October 8, 1999. Debbie received around $10 million in a settlement, which started with an immediate payment of $1.5 million. With the divorce, Debbie gave Michael full custody rights to their children. Following the divorce, Michael went on to have a 3rd child, Prince Michael II, born on February 21, 2002, to an unnamed surrogate mother. Michael stated that the baby was produced through an artificial insemination using his own sperm cells, and he was not aware of the identity of the mother. Nicknamed Blanket, Michael had infamously dangled his new baby son from the balcony of his hotel room in Berlin over a crowd of horrified fans. There was a widespread outrage over his lack of parenting abilities. He later admitted that, quote, "It was a terrible mistake and I would never intentionally endanger the life of my children," unquote. Michael was very protective about his 3 children and would even shield them behind masks when they were out in the public. He wanted them to be highly educated and follow a noble and well-respected profession such as medicine. He had seen a tumultuous time as a child artist and did not want his children to go through the same troubles. MJ shared special relations with a host of A-list celebrities, including Elizabeth Taylor, Princess Diana, and Diana Ross. He was especially close to Princess Diana. They had first met at a Wembley gig in 1988 when he handed her black Bat Tour jackets for Princes William and Harry. Just before Diana's death in 1997, Michael was spending thousands a month on phone calls to her. Veteran actress Elizabeth Taylor was one of Michael's closest friends. She coined his nickname, the King of Pop, which he seized on and used in his publicity afterwards. It all began during the mid-80s when Taylor walked out from one of the Jacksons' concerts in Los Angeles Dodgers Stadium. Learning of her abrupt exit, Michael called Taylor almost in tears. She assured the singer that she left due to bad visibility and not a poor performance. That short phone call became a 3-hour conversation and the beginning of their very ling and odd relationship. Just like Michael, Taylor had tasted stardom at a very young age. Neither had a childhood and both felt like they could relate to each other. Though their relationship was mostly private, she vocally supported MJ when he was accused of child molestation in 1993 and again in 2005. 2001 saw Michael celebrating 30 years as a solo artist with 2 shows in New York. Joining him on stage were big names in the music industry like Shaggy, Whitney Houston, Usher, and Destiny's Child. He also reunited with his brothers in an unforgettable performance. The same year, he released Invincible, whose single You Rock My World was a huge hit. Differences arose with Sony Music, whom Michael blamed for not promoting the album properly. Michael also alleged racial discrimination. As a result, his next single, Cry, was shoddy quality and did not even feature him. Never the one to give up easily, in 2003, Michael released another album called Number Ones, a collection of greatest hits, along with new single called One More Chance. Then, after a hiatus of 6 years long, Michael returned in 2009 when he announced a tour at the prestigious O2 Arena in London. This was to be his final curtain call, and the tour was aptly titled This Is It. His fans reacted with excitement, and over 750,000 tickets were sold within minutes of the announcement. In the weeks leading up to the tour, MJ rehearsed at the Staples Center in Los Angeles. The concerts were supposed to commence on July 13 of 2009 and finish on March 6, 2010. But less than 3 weeks before the first show was due to begin in London, Michael Jackson passed away, leaving the whole world in a state of shock. In June of 2009, Michael Jackson died at the age of 50 while in his bed at his rented mansion at 100 North Carrollwood Drive in Los Angeles. Just like his life, his death too was mired in controversy. It was later found out that Michael died of acute propofol intoxication or a fatal overdose of the propofol drug used to treat insomnia. His personal physician, who was present on the scene at that time of his death, Dr. Conrad Murray, was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 4 years in prison. Throughout his life, Michael had been rumored to be addicted to painkillers and over-the-counter drugs. At that time of his death, he was believed to be consuming the narcotic painkiller Dermirol for no valid medical purpose and was also taking sleep-inducing medication intravenously. The atmosphere was different when Michael passed away on June 25, 2009. The same media that had written conflicting reports about Michael during his lifetime honored him in his death. Ironically, Michael had the comeback of his dreams after his death as he became the best-selling artist of 2009. Michael Jackson was also reported to be one of the largest owners of property on the moon. In 2005, he bought a 1,200-acre plot in the Lake of Dreams and owned a smaller parcel in the Sea of Vapor. This was one of Michael's several extravagant purchases that pushed the one-time millionaire to a state of bankruptcy. The financial crisis started way back in 1993 when he had to settle against child molestation charges with a hefty $22 million. This was followed by several other lawsuits the following years and huge settlements. To finance his rich lifestyle, Michael borrowed to the tune of $200 million from banks and in 2006 was spending $20 to $30 million more per year than he had earned. He had to sell his controlling stake in the Neverland Ranch and other memorabilia to raise funds for himself. Just before his death, MJ agreed to perform 50 concerts in spite of poor health conditions. The concerts were seen as his last attempts to get out of his financial woes. Following his death, all assets were transferred to the Michael Jackson Family Trust. MJ's will stated that after his death, 20% of the money made through royalties would go to various unspecified charities. He did live a dual personality to deal with the pressure of his stardom. Off stage, he was shy, soft-spoken, and childlike, but on stage, MJ was a different creature altogether. When he performed, he gave his everything, and he did this because he loved music and loved performing for his fans. He entertained millions around the world for over 4 decades, and even after his death, MJ continues to have an influence on pop culture. He is undisputed king of pop and will forever remain in the hearts of music fans for years to come.